Let's get this thing started. We've got a lot of good info for us to cover tonight, and I know that we're always tight on time. So first thing is, thanks everybody for being here. Tonight, we are talking about decision-making to deferring and how to make your gap year happen. So my name's Kyle. I work with our EF gap year team. I'm based in Cambridge. I'm actually in our EF North American headquarters right now, which is my virtual background, but this is the real lobby in the building that I'm in. So tonight, we're joined by Anna, who's going to be the voice of higher ed, talking a little bit about her experience working with students and working with universities. And we have Ingrid, who's the voice of, or as the voice of an alumni parent, had a daughter, Sophie, that was with us for gap year last year. So we're going to ask both of them. They're going to turn their cameras off and be gracious to hang with us for just a couple minutes. We're going to get to hear from them, and we're going to get a chance to ask them questions shortly. And tonight's game plan is that we want everybody to understand more about a couple different areas. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are as EF, as an organization. We'll talk a bit more specifically about the actual planning process for a gap year. So I think this can really be helpful. The same concepts are going to apply if you are a sophomore or a junior in high school, or if you're a senior who's in that, let's think of it as crunch time the next couple of weeks, or if you're like a lot of our students who are in college right now and thinking about doing something different in the future. So it's going to be a similar process to help you think about your planning. We'll touch specifically on what deferrals look like, what they are, what that process is, and then we'll get to hear from our guests and from our panelists. That's it for now. Excited to be able to chat. And my colleague Emma is going to be monitoring our Q&A as we go. Hopefully we get a lot of things covered. If there's any burning questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and she's going to keep an eye on those. So, all right, let's kick this thing off with who are we as an organization? I think a lot of folks are probably meeting us. And when I say that, meeting EF tonight. So EF, Education First. We are, probably the simple way to put this is that we are quite literally the leader in educational travel. We've been in business since 1965, and in those nearly 60 years, we've quite literally helped millions of people to see new places, to experience new cultures, to learn new languages, and to learn new things about themselves. So I think we come to this conversation tonight with, I would argue, pretty deep expertise and experience in running educational programs for, starting with students, and we have programs all the way through for adults. And many of you may be familiar with us if you've heard that EF name in the past, because we partner with thousands of high schools and colleges across the country in programs like Explore America and EF Educational Tours as well. So all that really means is that we're coming to this conversation with working with a lot of different students and educators, and it's part of the reason and the foundation that has helped us to develop what our GAP programs are currently. And as we start to talk about that, I think one of the things that really makes us unique is that everything we do is international. So when you hear programs tonight, we're going to be talking about Europe and Central America, South America, Asia. And for me, as a staff member, one of the coolest, most interesting things about my work is that all of our programs are within what we would think of as the EF network, which is our organization, which is over 50,000 staff globally, offices and schools in over 110 different countries, and it allows us to run GAP programs in places that we have EF staff presence, support, and knowledge of locally. So, obviously our goal is to be able to run meaningful and impactful programs, and I think the foundation comes from that experience, comes from the resources that we have that are just quite different from many other programs that are out there. We also come to this conversation today talking about what is a gap year in 2023. And I messed this up earlier. I said 2013 because it's kind of felt like that the last couple of years, right? Like time is, it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And there's been a lot that has changed just in higher education in the last several years, right? I mean, there was already a trend in that direction, and then COVID has shaken everything loose. So we know that gap year carries a lot of misconceptions about what that means and what is actually considered a gap year. And to be fair, there really is a range on what that means. For us, we're focused on a very defined lane. We want gap programming for any of our students to be thought of as intentional, focused, centered around personal growth. Like they're really meant to be a stepping stone to whatever might come next for students, whether that's college, continuing college, job, or just preparing you to feel like a more fulfilled, complete, excited, motivated person out there in the world pursuing whatever it is you're interested in. We're fortunate that we get to work with some amazing students, again, who are at all different points of, I like to call it, their college journey, maybe in high school, all the way through thinking about joining us after college. But the core piece for the way that we think about gap year is that this is about giving yourself as a student an opportunity to be able to become the best version of yourself and finding ways that are going to push you, challenge you, stretch your comfort zone, and help you take that next step. All right, so in the title of our presentation tonight, we've referenced decision making, and I think decision making really starts tonight. And when we think about that, we want you all to start to get the wheels turning about what's bringing you here tonight. What are your goals? What's piquing your curiosity? What about a gap year feels like it can help you to get to whatever that next step is? I think it's a good opportunity to start and ask yourself questions like, what am I curious to learn? What sort of environment do I think would help me to be challenged, to learn, to grow? On the flip side, what do I need in the way of structure and support? We have a lot of different offerings to try to make sure that students are plugging into the program that really matches where they're at and what's best suited for them. And I would also hope that part of this is like, what are some interesting, exciting, fun, cool, motivating places that you may want to be able to visit, whether it's the first time or maybe it's just a more meaningful time and impactful visit. So decision making, really starts, like a lot of things, with hopefully an intentional conversation with folks that are near and dear to you, whether that's friends or family or counselors or educators. Being able to come at this conversation thinking in the framework of goals and outcomes, as opposed to just momentum that's carrying you into this step. So on our team, I think it's hopefully helpful for folks tonight to know, that the way that we work is, we run programs with students that's really all about human connection and personal connection. So if anything resonates with you tonight, your step would be to connect with this team, the team that I'm fortunate to be able to work with. And our job really is to start, just like I said, to understand what are your goals, what are the things that you're hoping to learn more about and to experience, to start to talk about programs that may be a match for that. Maybe we find that something that works. Maybe you realize that EF's not the right fit for you. If we do find something that is a good fit, helping you to start to have a game plan for how to bring that to reality, whether that's getting you set up something that's coming soon, like this summer or this fall, or if it's planning a little bit further in the future, fall of 2024, summer of 2024. We've got students that are planning for all of those different time periods, departure periods right now. But either way, if you find yourself inspired tonight, the next step is going to be able to actually have a Zoom or have a phone conversation with our team. All right, quick touch on programs. A lot of folks are beginning tonight curious about what can I actually do? What is considered a GAP program? So this is how we have split it up within EF. We've got 3 different categories based off of length that's also correlated to outcome as well as the itinerary, which means not only where you are, but what you're doing as well. So a lane that's what we call short term, about a month in length, a more typical semester program that departs in both the fall and the spring, and then a year program, which is in a lane all by itself, which is set up just like an academic year. Fall semester, come home for your winter break, and continue in the spring. Tonight is not a deep dive on programs, but we just want to highlight a few so you have a sense because I know a lot of folks are like, I don't even know what this is. So we just want to give you a little taste for what that might be. So we have students that will join us actually in a couple of weeks for spring programming, as well as the summer and the fall on a program, European Discovery, where our goal is to, within this month, travel together as a group through what we would think of as some of the major highlights throughout Europe to be able to give students exposure to different cultures, different languages, learn a little bit about the history and really what makes that country unique. So whether it's the UK, France, Italy, and students being able to not only learn about these places, but get a chance to connect socially and with their group. On the flip side, we've got students that are set up to be able to head off to Spain in just a couple of weeks, where they're going to do a deep dive into practicing and learning Spanish, where they're taking language classes at the EF language school in Malaga. And we have a whole network of international language campuses where students are living either with a host or with other students, practicing learning the language. And then because we love to travel, is we've got a whole bunch of cool excursions set up where you're visiting Barcelona, Granada, and having some optional weekend excursions as well. I'll highlight one more. I mean, I love sustainable development in Costa Rica. If you're someone that's intrigued by service work or working really in a hands-on format with nonprofits, that's really what that program is geared towards. And we've got a partnership with Global Business in London, partnership with Halt International Business School, where students are over the summer getting an intro to taking introductory business classes at the Halt undergrad campus in central London, working their way up to delivering a capstone presentation in their mini groups by the end of that month. So a really nice intro for students that are either intrigued or really excited about what business could look like for them in the future. Our semester programs continue to build on some of these similar themes. We expand the locales that we're traveling to. For example, Voyager is going to open up opportunities to travel through Australia, New Zealand, focused service work with nonprofit partners in Thailand, and then a full month of travel throughout a number of different cities in Japan. The Explorer semester is very unique. It combines travel, where 2 weeks up front, we're going to travel together as a group. Then students will have a month of focused language development in a city of their choosing in Europe. They will then pair that with a month of service work in Thailand, again, with our partner nonprofits there, and then wrapping up together as a group. And one last program I'll point to is Entrepreneur, is a 2-month internship based out of Stockholm, Sweden. We're actually a family-run Swedish company. So we've got some really deep roots in Stockholm, where we're reaching into some of our own network to make sure that students have a focused, impactful internship that helps them to be able to get some of the fundamentals of maybe business or the professional world. They live together in a shared apartment. They're working Monday through Friday during the week. And we've got some opportunities for coaching and reflection as well along the way. And then we build all the way up to the year, which takes everything that I've been talking about and puts it into one full package program where you're learning a language, you're doing focused service work, you're traveling in Europe and Australia, New Zealand, doing an internship, and then you're wrapping up in Leadership Academy, where myself and actually a few of my colleagues are about to head to the UK this weekend to close everything up with our year group right now. So exciting times for us ahead. Everything that I've mentioned so far, we take care of all of the organization, flights, accommodations, emergency support on program. All of our students work with their GAP advisor in their pre-departure process. We've got portions of meals covered, opportunities for free time and travel as well. A lot of ways to approach financial planning. Again, we don't fully have the time to all the way dive into that, but here's a lay of the land to just give you a range of what some of these programs fit into in terms of cost range and different ways, again, to approach it. A lot of it is combination of payment plans and scholarships, and making sure that, again, you have a plan too, and putting all those pieces together. So again, that's where our GAP consultants really stick out. All right, enough of that. Let's get to our guests who are here to help us learn a little bit more. So Anna, I'm going to invite you to come back on. We've got just a few more slides to be able to walk through, but Anna, maybe you could just start off and give everybody a quick intro so that they can have me stop talking for a second. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you everyone for coming today. I'm really excited to be here. Again, my name is Anna Jardine. I am here with EF Study Abroad, based here in Boston. I am a former assistant director of admission at Wheaton College in Southern Massachusetts, and I'm still very active and engaged in the higher education landscape as I read applications for a NESCAC school. I won't disclose where, just because I know that everybody, a lot of you are kind of going through that right now and in the thick of it. So I will step back for now. Excited to chat more about what kind of a gap year looks like to folks in kind of higher ed and college admissions.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna. All right. So we're going to go through a couple more fundamentals as we start to think about how does gap in college fit together, that whole world. We talk with families every day. I know that there's a lot of questions about this. There's also, on the flip side, not a ton of information. So Anna's going to offer some commentary and then share some more personal reflections as well. But these are the most common, and actually, I don't know if there is a fourth path that I have run into for students that are considering, how do I make gap in college work together, right? So let's just walk through what those are really quick. So I think the first is students are going to apply to college, or maybe they already have applied to college just as they normally would. Then they're coming to us, enrolling in their gap program. They're hearing back, they're deferring 1 year, which we'll explain exactly what that means. The second would be that they're committing to their gap year first. So maybe that's over the summer, the fall, before senior year. Then they're using their time throughout the rest of the year to be able to research and apply to colleges. Or the third path is that they are applying to colleges during senior year, and then as they get to this point in the spring, they're choosing to either defer or potentially actually reapply next year during their gap year and adding on a lot of that experience. So Anna, do you think from your experience, is there one of these paths that you would say is most common from what you've seen?
Yeah, I definitely would be happy to jump in. I mean, obviously, from my side, I would see the applications and see that a gap year did occur or will be occurring. So I definitely see kind of those who are either applying or have applied and then deferring happen a little bit more frequently. But I don't think one of the three is, better or worse by any means. It really depends on kind of personal choice, again, goals and timeline for again, you and your family, and kind of like your experience that you're looking for.
Awesome. Um, let's make sure everyone knows what it means to defer, because this isn't a word that's thrown around so often. So all this means is that you're postponing your enrollment, opting to start college a semester or year, sometimes more, but 1 year later, typically. And students can choose to defer for a lot of different reasons, but oftentimes, a gap program like ours is one of the most common. And I think we're going to get Ingrid's take on this tonight, but most folks, one of the big questions is, okay, well, let's say I do want to apply. What does that process even look like? I think surprisingly, most of the time it's almost not too simple, but a lot simpler than you would ever expect. It's usually going into your portal that you have with the school that you've been accepted to and submitting one-page document or an online form that just says, I want to do a deferral. A lot of times you're doing a program with us. We've got structure, educational curriculum, kind of all of the backbone of rigor that you can point to and share with the school. They say yes, and then you're off to the races from there. You've got your gap set up, you've got college set up. But we know that there's a lot of anxiety that comes with this. One of the things that we have used to help students going through this process is that we have a deferral guarantee. This just means if you enroll on a program with us, if for some reason the school comes back to you and says, no, we're not going to grant you a deferral, we're going to offer you a full refund for this. And of course, there's some parameters around here. We want to make sure that we've got timing sorted out. You can look at this on our website and talk with our gap consultants, but the reality is that we've hardly ever had to use this. I think it's literally maybe 2 or 3 times that we've ever run into this, because most schools want students that are coming to campus more ready, more prepared, more engaged. So Anna's going to help us with that. And I think just one more closing thought here is, there's just again a lot of questions around what are schools thinking about? How do they approach this? We're in Cambridge. We look at Harvard. They're right down the street from us, but they've also been pretty outspoken about gap years for students for a long time, and really thinking holistically about the student and saying, can they do something that's going to help them, again, to be, as they say in this, reach their full potential, and be able to come onto campus ready to really make the most of their time. We were fortunate, just one of many stories is our student Diego, who took a gap year, ended up reapplying to a school that he was not initially accepted to, added on his gap experience, and was accepted, and is off and enjoying his time, and something that he's really proud of, and it's a cool story to be able to share. So with that, Anna, let's invite you in full time here. So I think we want to generally kick it over to you to get just some of your talking points. Like, how do you start the conversation if a student is saying, hey, I'm considering taking a gap year, but I'm worried about how colleges or how schools are going to look at it? Like, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think something that's very common on students and families' mind for that matter. I would definitely say that it definitely does not have a negative impact on your application or anything of that sort. When you're coming into an admission office, whether you're heading into an info session, doing a virtual one, having an interview, whatever it may be, I think that what the college counselors really want to see is who you are as a person. And I think that like if that gap year is going to be enhancing you as a student, as a learner, as an active community member, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's actually a huge positive, right? There's definitely a ton of self-awareness that comes with, knowing that you need to take the time or want to take the time to learn and to grow in different ways that you may not do in the classroom.
Right. How do you think? So if a student was doing that, so if they are saying, hey, I want to take time to be able to learn, to grow, how can they translate that to their application or to their resume so that that story is translated in a meaningful way, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes, and you know this from traveling, and anyone that has been abroad, sometimes it's tough. You go and you have this amazing experience, and it's like, oh my God, it changed my whole life. But how do I put that into a meaningful way in my application? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one thing that I will definitely say is that, I think obviously the college admission process comes with a lot of anxiety. I know I had that during mine, and so you overthink each one of these, these particular aspects. But at the end of the day, right, every college, no matter which college, university, and institution you're applying to, everyone's looking at, grades. They're looking at, counselor recommendations. They're looking at course selection, things like that. But what's really on you like that you have control over, obviously you worked for those years in high school, but what you have control of in your interview, in your essay, and in the additional material section, you're able to kind of take that narrative and make it what you want. So I think for someone who is looking for a gap year or has done a gap year, making sure that you bring kind of your own voice to the forefront of your application and making it clear that this gap year, can look like a lot of things, but the one you did, if you were to do it with EF, is very structured, intentional, and again, be very explicit, on what you did on your gap year program within the application and build up the value of that. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right. So it's being specific. It's really trying to highlight like some tangible takeaways throughout the year. Can we go back? One thing that you said that to me stands out because I think every family is feeling it in some way, which is the anxiety around taking a gap year, right? I feel like I'm going to be off track. I feel like I'm going to be behind. I feel like people just might think that that's kind of weird and it feels safer to go straight to school. But I think you mentioned something when we spoke the other day about how colleges can interpret what a gap year maybe means or signals from a student. Could you remind us or just help kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so I think that, a lot of times it can seem like it might be like off track or different or something like that. But, not traveling in this linear fashion of education is absolutely okay. And again, I think that colleges, and a lot of times we think of it, as families, as students think about it as like, I'm bringing this to the table. Colleges also want to see, the other side of it too. And I think that having students who have, an extra semester, year, week of experience kind of in the world, being able to, raise maturity, worldview, it really brings a diverse kind of lens to the student community. Again, when we're doing admissions, yes, we're looking at one application at a time, but we're also looking for this holistic view of what the class of 2026, whatever it is, whatever that class that they're looking for that holistic group of individuals who care about something. And I think you taking a year, a month, a semester to go find something that you're interested in or pursue something you're interested in just shows the colleges and universities that even more.
Interesting. What is the piece you mentioned something about like how does that correlate into diversity with what colleges are looking for too? Is it just trying to highlight that you've got students that are coming from different backgrounds, like different experiences?
Yeah, I think having students with, different experiences who have taken, like a love of learning and experiencing the world into their own hands is definitely super, super positive. And I think having, diversity comes in a lot of ways, but having kind of a diverse range of students with differing experiences, right? Not everybody is going from, pre-K to elementary school to middle school to high school to college, I think is super impactful. And, like that Harvard statement was saying, we see there's like a ton of success in the gap year programs and having these, mature and self-aware students coming into their first year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. Let's do one more question for now, and then we're going to hear from Ingrid so she can give parent perspective. And just so folks know, If you do have more specific questions, we will have some open Q&A time at the end. Anna's going to hang out and be able to answer if there are follow-up questions. But maybe just one more is that I know we've got parents in here tonight. We've got parents and families, but I'm speaking a little bit more to the parents tonight who will watch this later on, who are just feeling like, hey, we are in this crunch mode. Like, we need to make a decision. How am I supposed to rationalize if my son or daughter does a gap program? What am I supposed to do next year? Like, how do I know that they're going to get back into school? How do I know that the college that they want to go to will actually interpret this application in the right way? Like, what would you say maybe to parents that are in that spot?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think obviously having you and your student talk to that gap advisor is key to kind of, diminish some of those worries. But I would also just again say, of course, I can't sit here and guarantee that everyone will get into the exact school that they want. But of course, you can never do that, whether you take a gap year or not, right? So I think by allowing your student and having your student, giving them the opportunity to kind of follow this passion, to an admissions person specifically, it's very clear that these students who do take this time for themselves and kind of expand their worldviews and have these experiences that are so impactful, it does really make students stand out in applications. Because again, like, I think I'm repeating myself here, but it just shows so much that they care about something, are taking action on that. And again, when you get to college, you're not just a flat application, you're now an active member of that student community. So seeing that they've done that for, however long it is, I think is super impactful.
Phenomenal. Thanks a ton, Anna. All right.
Yeah, of course.
We're gonna give you the chance to kick back. You can turn your camera off for a second. And Ingrid, I'd love if you could rejoin us here. And I'm hopefully sharing our correct screen so folks can see this cool picture of you and Sophie. And I'll kick it over your way if you want to just give a quick intro for everybody.
Hi, my name is Ingrid Mudge, and I'm from New York. I live right outside New York City in Westchester County. And my daughter, Sophie, went through the year-long gap program in, what year was it? 2021, 22? Yes. So I guess how much of an introduction do you want from me? Because I can go through the whole story, or
I think that's good. So maybe we'll break it up just to give people orientation. So I think it's helpful to hear a little bit of, number one, how did gap year get on your radar? And then what was that conversation like, bringing it up to Sophie and the decision-making process to actually say, like, yeah, I think we want to do this. Maybe we could just start there.
Right. So I definitely drove the bus on deciding to do a gap year. As I was watching Sophie through middle school and high school, it was clear that she struggled socially. She had a hard time keeping friends. And I also saw, as she was in her sophomore and junior year, I saw kind of immature thought patterns about how responsible she needed to be for her own success. And so I was really encouraging her to do a gap year. She wasn't super communicative about it, so I don't know really how she felt at the beginning, but we ended up attending a virtual, because we were still in COVID at that time. We ended a virtual gap year fair, and EF Gap was one of the presentations. There were probably 17 to 20 different groups that came and presented their gap years. And that was the first time I really understood how diverse the opportunities are for people to choose a gap year. And what it really brought home to me was that it's really important to understand exactly why you want to do a gap year. What do you hope to get from this experience for your student? Because there are a ginormous gamut of opportunities out there that will address a wide variety of needs. Now, when I looked at Sophie, I saw difficulty socially, and I saw some maturity issues that might limit her ability to succeed in a college environment. And it was those two factors that led me to choose EF Gap. Now, there was at that time a whole lot of, I'm sure there probably still are, a lot of webinars where you could sort of dip in and understand from different perspectives what EF Gap was about. And it wasn't until Sophie attended a recent student alumnus Gap webinar that she said to me, okay, now I'm ready to do this. I'm excited. Because what I sort of didn't really think about was that I look at EF Gap's itinerary and I think, holy cow, that's amazing. I want to do that. Everyone I know wants to do that. But Sophie looked at it and said, that looks really intimidating. I've traveled with my family. I've never traveled by myself. And it looked scary to her. But when she heard from the students that had been through the program, she said, okay, these people can do it. They seem like people that are kind of like me or that I could like, so I'm going to try it. And so that was where she really kind of locked in. We were on the track where we applied to college in the traditional fashion. And so she was accepted to University of Pittsburgh. And honestly, deferring was just about as easy as it could be. I didn't even send the email. Sophie sent the email to the admissions office saying, I'd like to defer to take a gap year. And they said, sure. So that was it. It was really, really easy. And then, yeah, so she left in the fall of 2021, and she did a unit of intensive Spanish in Barcelona, and then did service learning in Dominican Republic. She traveled in Ecuador and the Galapagos instead of Australia and New Zealand, because of COVID. They were still closed down, and her she did an internship in Berlin instead of in Australia because of COVID, but still just had the most amazing experience. And the growth of her as kind of an adult in the world was so obvious throughout the time that she was going through this process. I remember at one point, she started having doubts about Pittsburgh, probably in December or so, and she thought maybe she wanted to apply somewhere else. And so I said, why don't we just revisit the campus, and we can sort of reaffirm what you liked about it when we were there. And she made appointments with the business school, with the psychology school, with the dance team. She organized a campus tour. She did everything herself, which she never would have done before she left for this gap year. And we went together and we met with all these people, and she sorted out what she needed to sort out. And now she's kind of crushing it at Pittsburgh.
That's an amazing story. There's a lot to unpack there too, Ingrid. So I'm going to try to pull out a few themes that'll be helpful for folks to maybe dig in a little bit more. One is, so it sounds like you had mentioned, you kind of identified that a gap program or gap option might be interesting for Sophie for a few defined reasons. I'm just wondering, did you at any point have like the uncertainty or doubts, or is this the wrong path decision for it? Like, how did you wrestle with that, or maybe what gave you the confidence to blow past it, do you think?
No, I really felt like, honestly, EF gap year is not cheap, but I thought it would be way more expensive for her to go to college unprepared, emotionally and mentally and mature wise. And I think I was right in the end. I really felt like this was something we needed to do to just sort of take a pause and grow into some spaces that she needed to grow into to have a really successful college experience, not just socially, but also in terms of understanding that this is a step to preparing for your life. And she didn't seem to really understand that. Maybe she did, and she'll tell me later that she actually knew that all along, but to me it wasn't clear. So I felt all along that this was a necessary thing, and it was really just a matter of finding the gap year that worked best for her.
Yeah, perfect. That's a great theme. I'm glad you can reinforce that, because we mentioned earlier tonight, like really starting that conversation around goal setting and making sure that those pieces come back together is important. Okay, so for Sophie's year, she did a lot. You just mentioned the quick highlights, 2 semesters, quite literally traveling all over the year. I think something that is important to just for us to be direct with too is gap year comes with a ton of ups and downs. We know that there's challenges, there's plenty of things that students need to adapt to and adjust to, but it sounds like for you, you kind of honed in on Sophie's internship experience as something that was powerful when she was going through it, and then it's had a little bit of a story since then. Would you mind just kind of filling us in on what internship had looked like and where that's gone for her?
Right. So she was initially supposed to do an internship in Sydney, Australia, and she was really disappointed that Australia didn't open up in time for her to go there. But she chose Munich. I'm sorry, Berlin. Sophie will yell at me later. She chose Berlin, and there's an interview process. So all the students that are involved in the gap year will interview with the companies that are offering internships in that particular city. And she ended up getting an offer from a woman who ran a local travel tour company. And that woman was looking for help with her social media marketing, which is great because Sophie thought that she might want to do marketing in college. So it was really sort of all lining up for her. And unfortunately, because it was COVID, it ended up, Berlin was still very much cautious, locked down, careful. And she ended up working remotely. So she was on her own. She was the only intern working for this person. So she worked on her own, which was very disappointing to her. And then it turned out that this woman didn't really have a social media marketing plan. She kind of wanted an intern to do something that she really wasn't comfortable with in her business. And Sophie was like, I've never done this before. But what she did do was, she reached out to somebody that we know who's involved in advertising and who could walk her through some of the points that needed to happen. Sophie created a PowerPoint to present to this woman and ended up creating an entire social media marketing platform for her that persisted not only for the 6 weeks that she was there, but for another 2 to 3 months after she left. And so like the way that she took on responsibility and understood what the goals were was something completely new.
Yeah.
And it was not something that a year prior in her senior year of high school she would have done. It really sort of brought home the fact that she was starting to understand that the world is a different place than high school, and you really need to kind of step up and take responsibility and accountability for what your part is in any venture. So that was really so exciting to me. I think Sophie struggled in the moment with her working relationship with this woman that was very remote, and they weren't in the same room together very often because of COVID. So that's not something probably that people are going to experience anymore, thank goodness. But at the
Right.
time, that was difficult for her, but she got through it, and she did well. She did really well.
Yeah. How do you think that that's influenced her? I mean, I know it hasn't been so long since she wrapped that up, but how do you think that's impacting her as she's getting into her schooling this year and thinking about whatever comes next in the way of like internships or career or anything there?
Well, so she's at University of Pittsburgh, which is a very good undergraduate business program, and she is in the business school there. And they're very gung-ho on internships at Pittsburgh. So when you come in to interview at the school and to find out more about the program, they talk a lot about how many internships people get, but it's really difficult actually to get an internship within the business school or within a business environment as a freshman. However, because of the internship she had during her gap year, she now has an internship in marketing at a travel company in New York City because of her experience with that. And this is a company that said, well, we weren't going to take an intern this year, but because you have this experience, we're taking you. So now she's got this internship. So it's
All
really
right, Sophie.
and that's
Yeah.
just like launching her into the next steps as she goes on.
Amazing. Ingrid, I'm curious, what do you think from Sophie's perspective? And again, this is obviously filtering through you, but what do you think Sophie would want people to know about her experience? And I'm going to ask you the same from yourself, but what do you think Sophie would want people to know as like her big takeaway from her gap year?
I think Sophie would want people to know that she started out with some doubts and a lot of anxiety, trepidation, lots of unknowns. But that probably by halfway through, unknowns became something that was just kind of part of the deal, and you just rolled with it. And one of the things that we thought was great about EF Gap, and one of the things I really was attracted to when we chose them, is that there is a support system that starts out very strong, where there's a lot of structure, and the kids are in a school environment, they're learning language, so it's almost the same thing that they've just come from. But then they gradually move away from that to a point where they're living more independently, working independently, socializing more independently, so that it sort of gradually eases them into a place where they're making the choices and they're really kind of running the show a little bit more for themselves. And I think even though there was anxiety at the beginning, that structure of gradually letting go was exactly what she needed to come out of the end with all the confidence that she had.
It's a great response. Awesome. What would you say from your perspective? What do other families, other parents, other students, from your perspective, what should they know about
Well,
this?
I've already said a lot of it, but one of the things I think is most important is just really understanding what you're looking for. And if what you are aiming to get out of a gap year, because no matter what it is, there's a gap year out there for you. And, I think EF gap year exactly fit what we needed. We needed maturity, we needed socialization, we needed an understanding of accountability. And that gave us exactly what we needed. And maybe other people have other needs and they need other gap years, but there's something out there for everyone.
I think it's a great message. I'm on board for that too. All right. Fantastic, Ingrid. We are going to transition and start to wrap things up. And Anna, if you want to join us back in for a couple more minutes, we've got a few questions that have come in. So we had a question that was, what if your student isn't sure if they even want to attend college? So I'm going to give a stab at this. Ingrid, I'd be curious on your take. I don't know if, I know Sophie had other folks on program that were in this boat. I mean, we have every single year students that are joining us that are not, firm on exactly what their next steps are, maybe haven't even applied to college. And I think for us, we would say that's okay. They should have, I think the prerequisite is having the desire for some version of growth. And maybe it's just an opportunity to be able to put themselves in new environments, learn something more about themselves. I think what we've seen is a lot of students can find that, college can be a beneficial step to help them learn. And when they're together and they can, see that in other peers and see it in different environments, that can be really powerful for themselves. So I'll interject my personal story is I'm someone that took a gap semester. It was quite a while ago at this point, but it's part of why I love my job and love working with students going through this process, is because I know for me, I instantly felt so grateful for the opportunities that we have in this country, in the States, in the Western world, to be able to pursue education. And I think it really sparked something in me to want to take advantage of that and know that there's this big, cool world out there that you can go and plug into, and you can find a way to be able to make that happen. So I'll throw that out. Ingrid or Anna, do you have any thoughts on, advice for students if they're not even sure college is the next thing?
I would agree that I think exposure to the big wide world is a great way to understand where you want to put yourself in it. However, I think, Sophie also had a great friend that she made through her gap year that also wasn't sure he wanted to go to college, but while they were in Berlin, just fell in love with the city and ended up applying to and being accepted to one of the best art schools in Berlin, and now is doing art school, not necessarily going to a traditional college environment, but found the place where he belonged, like just through exposure to all these different environments.
Yeah, I can quickly jump in too. I think even just like, from the admission lens, there are students who, come through the doors of offices who don't end up wanting to or aren't quite sure. And I think, again, that gap year is, again, like exactly, Ingrid, what you said, finding that passion and the interest of what you want to be doing is important. And like Kyle was saying at the beginning of this webinar, that there are options. You don't need to apply to college, defer and go, right? You can go and then apply when you get back if you want, or if that's not the path you take, it's not the path you take. Again, like this education experience doesn't need to be fully linear. And so again, it's just for, you know, like Ingrid, what you were saying at the very beginning of this, of what you were saying, it's about figuring out what your student needs from this experience and kind of going from there.
Perfect. All right, y'all. Well, I think that we have folks that need to get to dinner and take care of the rest of their things back at home this evening. Ingrid and Anna, thank you so much for being here. I know this is a ton of awesome, useful, valuable information for our families going through this process. So hopefully we'll get a chance to connect with you both again in the future. Thank you for spending your time tonight. Thanks for everybody that joined us. And just as a final reminder, if anything sparked your interest tonight, the best next step is to be able to connect directly with your gap year consultant to be able to unpack questions, specifics, learn more information, all the above. So everybody have a great night. Guess we're gonna close everything out here. So nice to see you both, and hopefully we'll be able to chat soon. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
See you guys later. Bye-bye.